Beautiful people, how y'all doing? I'm back at it again. So let me hit y'all with a quick one. It's been some time, so I'm over here bursting with excitement. Before I start though, I gotta give a special shout out to my friend Sally over here who will be hooking me up. I call her Sally Mango right over here with my teas, right over there with my hashtags. And of course, my signature mark that I probably have on like everything. So definitely shout out to my friend Sally for taking initiative and hooking me up and definitely giving me these good products and ideas, for just I guess to promote myself, something that I rarely ever did back in the day. And, somebody that definitely believes in me, person that I call a friend for well over 20 years, decided that she's going to surprise me with a retirement present, even though I tell her not to. Harden, 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 harden. But my dear friend, it's always good to have, friends on your side that actually believe in what it is you're doing. So definitely shout out to my friend Sally for hooking me up with all of these t-shirts. Definitely appreciate it. Uh, what we gonna hit up on today? Uh, where I've been, for a little bit. All right. Even though I'm not, you know, on Facebook and YouTube, most of some platforms I'm on daily, some platforms I'm on here, kind of sporadic. I understand that in this venture, I definitely need some consistency and not just chasing perfection, all the while. Very often or not often you're gonna come up with a perfect product, but whatever your heart kind of drives you to do, whatever product that you can put out, it is going to touch someone. Whatever you do, and if you're doing it for the right reason, you may not necessarily meet the masses, but it is that one person that gives that like, that one person that give that share, that one person that you can affect is the reason why I kind of do what I do. So whether this turns out to be something pretty grand or this turns out to be something pretty minuscule, uh, one I am contented with just one. So that's the fun of it. A little bit of a difference. This is the first period of cycle that I don't have a class per se. My last audience was my basic trainees, and during uh, the graduation process, I always give them a commencement speech. Get them pretty motivated and excited to kind of to walk over the field. Some of the drills kind of taped it. I don't believe I've ever shared any of those speeches that I kind of give them. But one of my favorite catchphrases sounded a little bit like "but now," but now, kind of signifying the fact that they faced a lot of adversity, a lot of challenges, overcome a lot of fears, and now they're here. So just to have a little bit of it, a lot of them had self doubt, but now they are about to walk across the graduation stage. A lot of them had friends and families that doubted them and that would have expected them to be back within 1 or 2 weeks, but now they're about to walk over the graduation field. Some are homeless. Some lack education. Some may lack any particular skills. Some were labeled with education deficits. Some were labeled, as pretty bad characters. But now, they have managed to succeed at something that they've either always wanted to do or something that is about to change their lives. So I just say, but now we have to live in the now. All right, living in the now is what most people should actually concentrate on. Living in the past is often painful, and it is actually something that you can't change. What has already happened has already happened. What has already been said has already been said. Ain't no pulling back, ain't no taking back. And sometimes I tell the trainees, once that shot has been fired, you cannot redirect where that round is going to land. Whatever you were looking at that particular time, whatever you were aiming at, there is where it's going to go. All right, so you got to make sure that you positively identify your target before you fire that round. All right, for a little bit of a military kind of termage. So the past, you cannot affect the past. No need to stress it. No need to be digging up the scabs from your past. The future will give you a headache. The future will give you anxiety because you can rarely affect that either. You can plan for it, you can prepare for it, and hope that the outcome is going to be like you visualize, like you expected. But chances are it may not. So you were trying to plan for something, you are getting anxiety for something that has not happened yet, and you are ignoring your present, the place where you should be. Another term that I often use with them is to be where your boots are. That I got from my father. When I say I got it from my father, is the fact that regardless of where he went, whether he went to work, he came back home. Whether he went out to play Pandra and Panorama, he came back home. Carnival season, he came back home. And whenever he was home, he was present. So be where your boots are. Wherever your boots are is where your mind needs to be, where your body needs to be, where your spirit needs to be, where your finance needs to be. Don't live in a situation. Don't have your boots present in one house and you trying to live loftily in another house. Don't try to be in one relationship, but your mind is elsewhere in another relationship. So be invested into your now. You can only live in the now. You can't live in the past. You can't live in the present. So I also tell them, hey, be where your boots are. When you're at work, be at work. Oftentimes there are a lot of things that distract you from being in the now. Your kids, your health, situations that you cannot necessarily help. But if you could help it, you would help it. If you were there, you might be able to influence the situation. But chances are, if you're not there, you're really going to have that power to influence that situation. So just be where your boots are. Nothing fancy, pretty simple, pretty simple. And one of the mistakes that I know I have made in some of the things that I have spoken about, or the things that came to my realization when I wasn't as well-rounded as I am now, is oftentimes we minimize the things that our people are going through, things that actually affect them. So as a society, we always like to say everybody is on an equal playing field. Everybody has the same opportunity to get an education, get a job, or whatever it is. And we tend to dismiss the individuals that are having some kind of a deficit or some kind of a struggle. Whether it be the African American communities, whether it be individuals in prison, whether it be minorities, and whatever it is. It would be foolish. It would be foolish to dismiss the situations and the realities that these individuals actually live in, because they're living in these realities, they're living in these situations. And if you dismiss it, it usually angers them, and it shows a lack of sensitivity and a lack of realization altogether. But the question I have resorted in asking is the so what. The so what is going to initiate some kind of movement. You have a lack of education, so what? What is the outcome of that lack of education, and what are you planning to do about it? You're poorly funded, so what? And what? You've had a mental deficit, you've been physically harmed, you've been psychologically harmed, so what? After you've asked that question and come up with a number of answers, right about the fifth or sixth or seventh so what, you actually come down to what that person should actually be doing to get themselves out of that situation. Because there's always an answer, there's always a result that prompts that person to take action in their own situation so they can come out of that situation. So never negate the fact that individuals are going through what they are going through. Just try to identify the problem and help them ask these so what questions to the point that they have gotten the whole picture of the situation, and now they know at what point they should start taking action and what actions they need to take. So what? So what is not a limited question. It is pretty much a question for you to identify whatever concern it is that you're having, whatever situation you're having, and actually move on from that. Another thing that I've realized is expectation and expectation management. I've used that with my trainees for quite a bit of time, and it has good results. Good results is something that they can actually walk away with some kind of benefit from. And one thing I kind of harp on is for them to have manageable expectations, for them to actually be looking themselves in the mirror and realize where they're at and where it is that they actually go, because the playing ground, or what they enter the situation with, what they enter the job with, whatever you enter a relationship with, differs for anybody. So whereas in a training type environment, you might have one trainee enters basic training and they can do 25, 35 push-ups off the bat. And then we have individuals entering that training environment and can't even do five. So for the individuals that start off at a higher RPM, my expectation of them and their expectations of themselves, is a little higher than the one that, starts off on a lower rung of the ladder. Can the person that start off at 5 end off at 65? Of course they can, but is it measurable? Is it a realistic expectation to have with the amount of time that we have to train them? And sometimes the answer to that question is no. So if you end up having unrealistic expectations of yourself, unrealistic expectations of your partner, of your job, you can actually misdiagnose your situation and actually tell yourself that you're failing at something when you're actually progressing, but just progressing at a slower pace. Or you can have a unrealistic expectation of yourself that leads to disappointment. And oftentimes people do not effectively communicate the expectations that they have of each other. Some people don't voice an expectation, but they voice their dismay, they voice their disappointment when that silent expectation that they either had of themselves or another person doesn't necessarily come into fruition, which is a very foolish thing. And I myself, being redundant over here, have done this many a times. Whether you have expectation of your kids, whether you have expectation of your spouse that you don't necessarily voice, but you have disappointment over a silent expectation. So have manageable expectations. Make sure your expectations are communicated. When having expectations of yourself, understand that some of the expectations that you have of yourself lends into that one thing that everybody is striving for. And I consider that to be an identity. But if you miscategorize your expectations, and your expectations, you're seeing them, or your lack of expectations, or expectations that are not met, you're seeing them as failure. You can miscategorize yourself as a failure. You can miscategorize yourself and tell yourself you're just having a bad string of luck, or you're in a rut, when you're simply having unrealistic expectations. When it is tied to your identity, it is very dangerous. And you can tell me if you've done this in the past, or if you've seen individuals done this. You take a test, all right? The test of life, you've heard me say, countless amount of times, you should never be afraid of the test, all right? All the test is to gain, your level of knowledge based on the lessons being taught. So sometimes individuals take the test. They get, say, an 85% off to the test, and about, through the questions that equals at about a 15% wrong on the test. Most individuals always go to the wrong answer first, which is the 3 or 4 that I got wrong that resulted in this thing, and totally ignore the fact of the 85% that they didn't get right. And oftentimes they use the 15% that they got wrong to label themselves and have it factor into the identity versus the 85% that you go wrong. And you're always going to have your critics as well, your critics that quick to point out the things that you get wrong. How could you miss that question? I mean, it was like, you're dumb, or I can't believe you didn't know that. And that criticism, if you ever look at criticism as I have looked at it, criticism rarely ever comes from a person that is in a position that's higher than yours. Individuals that are higher than you, whether it be in positions of jobs, positions in relationships, positions in life, they offer you feedback. They offer you something that is constructive. But when it comes to criticism, it often comes from individuals that are not doing what you want to do, not doing what they want to do, wanting to do what you wanting to do, but not being brave enough to do it, or not having the time to do it, the finance to do it, or whatever it is doing it. But then they offer themselves an opinion, and it happens to people that are well-to-do in life. It has a lot to do with people that are not, so well. The last couple of cases that we've seen on a public platform were those two young ladies. One that is in gymnastics and the other that is in tennis. Both brilliant athletes, both excelling in their field, but they started to feel so much pressure from the critics that it affected their mental health, that they no longer started to enjoy the thing that they were doing since they were toddlers, since they were juniors. They lost the love, and the voice of the critics were a lot louder than the voice of the cheering. Yes, they have 99% of the people that are cheering for them, giving them accolades. They're winning gold medals here, they're winning championships there. But that 1 to 2% of individuals that they do not know, that happens to press that right critical button, that they themselves might have had a negative feeling about, you know, they give those individuals more power, and it started to affect their mental health. So a lot of us are out there doing that kind of stuff. You do 95% of the things right. You do 85% of the things right. But the 2 or 3% of things that you do wrong, you use that to kind of forge your identity. And that is where you need to come out of. You can look at young ladies that have quite a few kids at an early age. Oftentimes, that is the only identity that a neighborhood sees in that. Hey, who is that? That is no longer that person's names. Oh, that's the young girl that have about 6 or 7 children down the road. Who is that? Hey, that is the one who just come out from jail. Hey, who is that? Hey, that the one who does make pullover down the road. Hey, who is that? Hey, that the one who get about 6 subjects. So they're using either your successes or your failures to categorize as part of your identity. And you have to get to the point where you don't give a damn, where you don't give a flying. Because if you give that flying, it can be beneficial to you or it can be at a detriment to you. You have to get to the point where your give a damn is busted. It is human psychology, it is human nature to want acknowledgement, to accept praise, to wish for praise, to help establish your identity. And oftentimes we put a lot of weight in who others think we are than who we know we are. My identity is mine. My opinion of me is more important than your opinion of me. I don't give a I don't care. And you have to get to the point where you are unfazed and unbothered. I'm not talking to the point of ignorance where you cannot accept feedback. I'm talking to the point that the negative damage that others allowing social media to have on them, for likes and shares to have on them, sometimes for family members, spouses to have on them, you have to get out from that point and establish your own identity. Your identity should be founded in who you are as a person, not necessarily tied to any particular jobs, because we know those are fleeting. It shouldn't be tied to physical appearance, because that is fleeting. The essence of yourself, your spirit of yourself, your well-being should be more a part of your identity, and the things that you aim to change, whether it be your physical appearance or your education or your spiritual well-being or knowledge or whatever it is, can contribute to your entirety, to your identity as a whole, but that not necessarily encompass the entire thing. Know who you are, so individuals cannot tell you who you are. Their voice is loud. Their numbers are growing, especially in today's society where we have things like cancer culture and all of those things. Number one, ask yourself the so what question. Acknowledge the but now question. The but now we are here. So what are you going to do now that you're here? So what, you failed a test? So what, you have a divorce? So what, you have a little bit of weight on you? So what is the outcome, and what are you planning to do about it? And last and definitely not least is to manage your expectations and establish an identity that you feel good about, one that you can share with your friends, one that you can share with your family, and continue to exist in you being your best self. That is my 2 cents. I said what I said, and I'll see you beautiful people on the flip side.